Okay, are we doing it? Can someone in the comments tell me we're doing it?
I think we are live.
All right, sweet. Welcome to the Makercast. I'm glad you made it here. I tried to throw you off as best as I could this morning by completely bungling the original stream. If you think it looks bad, I promise you, behind the scenes, it's actually worse and more embarrassing. But yeah, glad you're all here. I'm really excited to be here with this lovely group of talented people. We will introduce ourselves momentarily. The way this works, if you're new to this, we're each going to take some time to talk about stuff we're working on. Feel free to ask questions in real time, and I will do my best to keep my eye on them and make sure the current presenter is able to answer them. And yeah, I think that's all I need to say up front. If you're interested in being on the Makercast, hit us up. Hit one of us up. I think we're always excited to add new friends. Yeah, without further ado, so I'm Guy. I've been on here a few times before. I'm very happy to be hosting again. I am a software developer by day. I mostly work on Android applications, so a little bit of Java, Kotlin, C++ when I'm feeling spicy. And I do a bunch of hardware stuff on the side, which I will share with you shortly. I'm going to pass it over to Jason. I think we all have the same layout, so we're going to go that way to Jason.
Cool. Yeah. Hi. Thanks for hosting, Guy. Yeah, glad to be here. I think this is my second time on Makercast. Yeah, I'm Jason Coon. But yeah, by day, I'm also a full-time software developer. And then, yeah, in my very limited spare time, I make light art stuff like what you see behind me and what I'm wearing here, which I will talk about during my part. We go over to Lee.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Lee. I am an artist. I think that is my day job. But I do freelance tech things of all varieties. And I'm also the chair of the Open Hardware Summit. So I make a lot of things that kind of make technology accessible or make technology weird in my spare time. And I think my kind of like day-to-day is either teaching or helping artists and helping technologists kind of like make their work light up or move or beep or whatever they imagine. I guess I'll pass it off to Jonathan.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan. I work in an office during the day, and by night I'm a maker, kind of like the Shipu.
Alrighty, welcome.
And welcome to the cast, all the new people. I'm Clem, known as MyMX. I am one of the hosts of Element 14 Presents. I've been quite often on this Makercast before, and I do mainly electronics and 3D printing resins back there. And apparently now I make computers, which I will demonstrate in a bit.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I'm very excited. In fact, I'm so excited, Glenn, I'm not even going to make the people wait a bit. I'm going to ask you to go first because I'm really excited to see what you got.
Okay, well then, let's get right into it. Let's start by, could you just make me big? Because I have stuff to show, and then I'm going to share my screen for the demonstration. So, I hope you guys all know what this thing here is. In case you don't know, this is one of the elusive Raspberry Pi compute modules that you have a hard time finding nowadays. And it goes usually inside stuff. So you would embed this in projects, products, or whatever. And there are breakout boards like this official one where you just plug it in. And then you have all the convenient connectors that you usually need to develop stuff. And then afterwards, you embed this in the finished project. So, well, since you can't get these, and since a really awesome open source project has been made by some awesome people online that I stumbled across, I made a thing. You can see it has the same form factor. So it has exactly the same form factor. It also has the same connectors on there. Whoops. And now it fell down. But it has very different components on top. So in the original, you have a Broadcom SoC, you have a Wi-Fi chip, you have a lot of RAM and onboard storage and stuff. And on this here, you just have an ESP32S3, which the normal viewer would just say, okay, he made a microcontroller board in the same form factor, which would make total sense because, at least that's my opinion, a ton of projects that people are doing with Raspberry Pis could easily be done with microcontrollers. Also, Wi-Fi enabled projects could easily be done with ESP32s and stuff. They might even work better because of less overhead. But not all of them. Sometimes you just need Linux. And sometimes the power that a Raspberry Pi holds is also overkill. And these are getting expensive, especially if you want to deploy a lot of them. So what if you had a really low power and low budget Linux system in the same form factor? And very recently, and I will totally butcher the handles, but the Twitter handles are at ESP32DE, a guy called Rudy. And then we have JCMBKV. Sorry, I just can't get thing. But the point is, those two awesome people ported Linux to the ESP cores. So the ESP32S3 has a dual core Extensa core. I think it's an LX7. And they basically ported Linux to that core. So they made it bootable on there. And it already had a few iterations. And now we have basically a workable system on this here. And they did all the hard work with software and stuff. And I just made it into this form factor and basically tried it out. So it works in that. And I intend to develop further on that. Also, just today, I have published a flashing tool because the process to get Linux on this thing is really cumbersome. So my computer actually had like really bad hiccups during compilation. When I tried to compile that, it's 2 times it just shut off completely, and I'm not sure why. So they gladly gave me already pre-made binaries for that, but still. The flashing is like a multi-step process, is really difficult. So I made a flash tool that's now on my GitHub, and it's called sudo flash, and it's basically automating all these steps. So it configures all the tool chains, and you tell it which files are which, because they can have different names if you're compiling them yourself and make custom versions, and then it flashes them on here for you. It's basically you have to flash it 5 or 6 times to make it workable. One key difference that you see on these things is the original one doesn't have any ports. So to actually use it, you have to embed it into something, either like a normal I/O board, you already did a project, or maybe you have a development kit, a homemade one for your project, where you have the ports. You can actually get software on there, configure it, interact with it in any way. But this one is a bit different. There's a USB-C connector on there. And I can already tell this, the second revision is in the works, and it will have 2 of those, and it will have a lot of other stuff as well. So for now, we have one USB-C connector on here, and we have a UART header on here, which means that if we plug this in, then we can use this standalone. So you don't have to embed it. You can use it like any microcontroller board, any ESP board, just as it is. And only if you want to use GPIOs and other expansion, then you just plug it into something else. So I'll hope to be able to share my screen.
While you're working on that, the most important question is, does it run Doom?
Well, kinda. So there are people doing ports on Okay, this is the right screen. So there are people, of course. You just have to add the secondary thing to the screen.
I'm so bad at this. All right, here we go.
That's not a problem. Oh yeah, it's basically another media source for you. Yeah. So I'll plug now my USB UART adapter in here. In the next revision, this is basically integrated into the board, and I also intend to put a GPU on there, a homemade one, to give it like the same capabilities as this thing has. Now it's basically only text output. Okay, I have connected this to my computer. You can see my screen on here. I just start PuTTY. USB 0 is my USB to serial adapter, and we need 115200 baud because that's the standard baud rate for that. So I make this as big as I can, but I'm pretty sure it will be really hard to read because I don't know how to influence the size of that. So it will boot when I plug it in. So we have Linux running on ESP32 whenever I can find the USB port. There it's booting. So this is the full boot process. That's not a video, that's doing it right now. And I will also go over a few key things that we have here. It has, by the way, just found my network. And we have a login. The password is the standard password root. And we have a shell. So if I type ls, nothing shows. But if I go back to the root directory and ls, then whoop, there are things on here.
That is wild.
And so really interesting things about this is you can see in the top one that it's running Linux kernel 6.5.0. So it has a modern kernel. It's not like 2-point-something really old ones that you find on some SoC ports. Then it actually is running at 160 megahertz only, as opposed to the 240 that you would expect, which is its standard thing. And that is because the, at least as I understand it, yes, that command works and it will delete everything. Oh no, that command doesn't move. Wait. Let's save that for later. I'll do it as the last thing of the demo, okay? I promise I'll do it. Just remind me.
Is that like walking away from the explosion without looking back?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. So you would expect it to run on 240, but it's only 160. By the way, you can see here that it's really running on ESP chipset. And that is because one of the cores does the Wi-Fi stack, and the other one actually does the Linux kernel stuff, which is super interesting. I did not make that port, so I'm just like from what I've learned. Yeah, super cool stuff. It has found my network, which I can prove by typing in ping, and I'm pinging my own website, which is mymx.com, and we have pings. So it's actually on the network. And really interesting now, if I try to make any new directory, like let's call it test, it says it can't do it. It's a read-only file system. Well, that's a bummer. So what can we do with this if it's a read-only file system? Well, there is a mounted device, and it's root etc. And that one is actually writable. So I can make a directory called Makercast if I want to. And whoop, if I check that, we have that directory Makercast right here. So it's now actually writable, but only in this one. So how do you get data onto this? Oh yeah, I've seen in the comments, Johnny said just remount as writable. That doesn't work. So you can't just remount stuff. That just breaks things. So how do I get data on there? I would really love if we can develop this in a state that it uses the mass storage functionality that the ESP32S3 natively has. So if you are using it with Arduino, you can make it show up like a thumb drive. And that would be perfect to just shovel data onto that, but that's not done yet. So the way I put any files on there is I've made an FTP server specifically for that device. By the way, the thing already has a name. I call it sudosom, which sudosom.com is also the address where you find currently the stuff going around with this. And I will make a dedicated Element 14 Presents video on this thing. And then also all the files and stuff should be released. And I hope to get the next version done. So now this is basically the alpha one. And the next one will be the beta one. And that should also go out to people to test and make software and crazy projects and whatever with it before I put this thing into production, because that's the plan. I want this to be usable by people. So the way I get stuff on here is I download it. So I made an FTP server, and with wget we can go to sudosom.com/test.txt, and now it's downloading that file. And if we check that out, it should be now somewhere here. There's test.txt. Yeah. And of course, since it's a Linux system, I can also get that test.txt. And there we have it. So it basically says this has been downloaded. And how do you download files? Also, I made a thing called, basically it works the same way, Makercast.txt. Bad address. Okay, yeah. We get sudosom.com/makercast.txt. And now we have that. Get it. You can see it's like any other Linux computer. It's just really, really tiny. Oh, yeah. And now here we have the creators. So the original handle is @JCMVBKBC. That's the guy that ported this initially. And ESP32DE, that's the one that basically made a few changes to that and brought it in the state it's now. And they're basically working really tight together. And they have a good repo where there's a lot of stuff. This also, by the way, works on a new Olimex board that just recently came out, which was not built intended for this, but yep, it works also on there. Yeah, here's a little message for the people. Maybe they can read it, but it's if you want to join in on development or are just interested in this thing or want to try it out or whatever, then best is to join my Discord server, which is discord.meiermakes.com. And I thought also I will do an Element 14 video on this, so there will be stuff going on with this. And if anyone wants to join in on the software side, which is not my specialty because I'm like strictly a hardware guy, then please do so, because I'll basically need any help that I can get. And now, I think there are not really any questions. Yeah,
there was one question.
There's one, Clem. Yeah, the SSH.
SSH currently not. It's very like this is basically just the kernel. It's not even a full distribution. But one thing that it has is if I go back to the root and I'll go into the binaries, then we can see that there is Busybox, and Busybox is basically the most basic command utilities that you can have. So there's a lot of stuff. I've tried out a few of those. So some functions that you would expect from normal systems are working, and some are not. The most important one is VI is there. So you can actually type stuff and save it on there. And I seem I've forgotten to quit VI again. Yeah, so the most basic parts are here, but it's really a absolute bare bones system. Also the stuff is this has only 3 megabytes of storage free, so you have to make do with what it is. Currently, there are things in the work with more RAM. This only has 8 megabytes of RAM, by the way. And you need those. So this only works if you have an ESP32S3. It has to be as much storage as you can get. Usually 8 or 16 megabyte is what you get. And you have to have the 8 megabyte PS RAM version. That's the minimum. And currently there are people working on making more RAM addressable. In theory, a gigabit is possible, in theory. And how to find methods to attach storage to it. Also, one thing that would really change the thing as a whole is if we can get USB hosts to work, or the host functionality. So we can have USB gadgets with their drivers on there, but that's also a problem with space for all the drivers and stuff.
What about external flash?
Yeah, that's also a thing, but it has to be addressable.
Right. Okay.
That's So then the idea that I want to implement in the beta version is basically the biggest difference between these boards now is this is basically just giving you a terminal. It's from its functionality, it's now not equivalent because it's not a full distribution. It has just very little space, but it's from the usage side, it's like a pocket beagle, where you also did not have any graphical applications, and you don't have any Wi-Fi. Well, this has Wi-Fi, so it's one step ahead. But it's the usage is similar. It's basically a key fob computer, and you can embed it into stuff. But on a compute module, and that is one of the key features of these, is that you have Ethernet, HDMI, and stuff all on these headers. So you can actually expand them to full usable normal computers. So I want to make a GPU on there, and the easiest way, and I think the fastest way to implement this is to use Raspberry Pi, the RP2040, the chip on the Pico. Use that to read in all this serial data and put it out over DVI, which is a subset of HDMI. So I can just put it onto these headers, and then it would work with the normal HDMI ports of these expansion headers. And Adafruit has made a library that should allow that to also do graphics, but then you would basically, all you then need is a graphics driver specifically for that board. So it basically uses the Adafruit GFX library to draw all these graphics. That's the idea. Let's see if I can pull it off and if it all fits on the board, because here's the original the board, and the stuff is you can't really it's already a 4-layer board, and these hundreds tiny pins, that's not so easy to route. So either I go 6-layer or I find some clever way to do it, but I will figure it out eventually. Okay, who's ready? Oh yeah, who's ready to wreck the board? Just put the screen on again, and we'll do the RMRF. Okay, so
this is going to crash the entire stream. It was nice.
Yeah,
it was nice
probably
being on with you guys.
Okay. So, okay, we're in the root directory. Do you want it with sudo or without?
Well,
sudo,
of course, with sudo.
Sudo. Okay. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Can't execute sudo. No such file or directory. Sudo is not implemented.
Right. Yeah.
I'm already root, by the way, so I wouldn't even need it. No, put it in. We're not finished.
But you're gonna destroy us all. I can't just
I love your determination to destroy your own work.
It just can't because there's no sudo. But what if we do rm/rf and the root folder? 3, 2, 1. Read-only file system, read-only file system, read-only file system, permission denied. Now it goes through all the files on there. I haven't done this before, by the way. Just read what's on screen. But it looks like it says operation not permitted, read-only file system, or permission denied. Let's see how long this takes. You can, I have no idea how long that will take because it's like a million files. But
All right, we're gonna put it back on when it's done, though, Clem.
We'll put it back on when it's
Yeah.
done, and you can make your bets if it will ruin anything or not.
I'm going with yes.
We'll see.
All right, that was super cool fun. I definitely want to get my hands on one of those at some point. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sharon.
So, just shouting out if anyone wants to get involved with this or get one. Just here's my handle @MyRMakes. Add me on Twitter or whatever, or join the Discord, and I'll be out there and make myself heard.
Awesome. Thank you. It's still go. Oh wait, no, it's going still. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Still.
Next.
I'll let you know.
Cool. Next up, Lee. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. All right. Well, I have two things I would like to share with you guys.
I'm gonna make you big. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great, actually.
Okay. Brace yourself. Here you go.
So the first thing I want to share is this, which is a badge I made for the Biohacking Village this year at DEF CON. So I've been kind of like a viewer in badge life world for a couple years now, and I was really excited to make something. So I volunteer with Biohacking Village, and if you're interested in like anything to do with like how the human body and technology work together, and you like DEF CON, it's a great place to be. And yeah, so the first thing I kind of want to share is like the PCB art. So I've done some PCB art for a couple of folks in the maker community already. I'm really happy with this one. Nina, who's the executive director of Biohacking Village, came to me and she had like a painting. It was like a very rough painting that she saw somewhere and took a picture of, and she's like, I kind of want something like this. And then I did my best to approximate it with with Adobe Illustrator. So just like being kind of like creative with the different layers of the PCB. So the whole front is like basically just decorative. Like, you know, there's a couple of like LEDs at the front. My badge kind of got busted in my trip home from DEF CON, so I can't turn it on, which is a huge bummer. But
it still looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm really happy about it. It's like it looked better than I imagined it. Like even like some like bare FR4 board here really came out well. I feel like often that looks like it's hard to make it look good. It's an ugly color, but I think it turned out. So thank you. I really appreciate that. The one downside about the design is that it has a lanyard, like it goes like around your neck, but it's like it's kind of deadly, like it's really sharp. So
it fits the theme of biohacking.
Yeah, exactly. Give you a little wound or two. So it's super simple because what we wanted to do is like a big part of Biohacking Village is citizen science. So we're trying to find ways that we could do some citizen science, but make it like really cheap and accessible. So what we did was we put a microscope on the badge. So if you look, here I have maybe this LED in here. So, oh, can you make me big again?
Yep, 1 sec.
So if you look in the eye of the badge, you can hold things up and it's a microscope. So it's super cool. This is like a hack that I picked up from some artists who were using these lenses to run microscope workshops. And the lens is actually from a laser pointer. So what they were doing is they were taking apart laser pointers and like they would just go to the dollar store and just clear it out and just take all the laser pointers and they take it apart and only take this lens that's inside. I found them on AliExpress for a lot cheaper. And of course, now I have thousands of lenses because that's how it goes on AliExpress. But on the back here, you can also illuminate your sample with UV light or with white light because I see a lot of like, I always have artists on my mind because I work with a lot of artists and I am an artist. But a lot of the artists that I was originally working with were working with all of this like UV reactive molds and UV reactive pigments and UV reactive organisms. So they were doing a lot of UV things. So you can either illuminate your sample with UV light or you can just use regular light. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I definitely spent a long time looking at my fingerprints under here.
That is so cool. I've never seen anything like that in a badge.
Yeah. my grimy fingerprints. There you go. Yeah, I thought it was cool because I feel like a lot of badges, they're very like technically complex, and I really love things that are simple. It's like my favorite thing is to make like simple tech.
Yeah. Lee, we have a question. Is the brain an inner layer? That looks really cool.
So what do you mean by inner layer? Like this is just like the solder mask, and then the white is the silk screen, and then this part here is just like the bare board, and then the outer layer is all the gold plating. So
But it's just a 2-layer board, right? It's not 4-layer with things and
oh yeah,
art
yeah.
embedded in inner layers. Maybe that's what.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not a 4-layer board. It's. I think the reason it looks so like different is because of like the amount of exposed metal there is on here. I think it's just unusual, so I think it just makes people think about it differently. Like the back looks like pretty traditional. You can understand it as a PCB more. So I worked with Badge Pirates on this as well. They did a lot of like the assembly and really like making it like happen for DEF CON. So they are awesome. Like shout out to those guys. So yeah. Any other questions about this? I have some other stuff to share too, but
None from the comments, though. Several people mentioned how awesome it looks.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Were those DEF CON exclusives, or will there be spares for sale anywhere? Or
they are DEF CON exclusives. I do have some empty boards that if someone finds me out in the world, I could probably put one in your hands. But they will not be for sale, unfortunately. But these lenses, like getting them on AliExpress, like they're very, very, very cheap. And what these artists who I was working with were doing was taking these and like using like blue tack and putting them on their phones, like on the camera of their phone, and then taking videos. So if you want like just the microscope and not the whole thing, just ordering these and using blue tack. It's the way to go.
Cool. Badge Pirates are Kansas City neighbors of mine.
Oh, awesome.
They're super cool. Great people.
I love those guys. They're great. So fun to work with. So the other thing I wanted to share with you guys is, so maybe some of you folks know I make these zines. They are books about electronics, like about basic electronic concepts. So this one is about LEDs. It just kind of like goes through like what is an LED, what are different form factors you might see an LED in, and then I got this one about buttons. So like it just goes through like things that I feel like pulls and throws. Like I didn't go to engineering school. I went to art school, and no one ever told me. No one ever told me this. So eventually I figured it out. This was like the book that kind of started it all about wires, and it's just because I like had this moment when I was working on stuff, and I stripped a wire for the first time, and it was like a strand core wire, and I'd never seen that. I'd only ever seen solid core wires, and I was like, what is happening? Like, what is this? And I didn't have any like mentors or anyone to like turn to, and I was so confused. And of course, now I know that was so many years ago, but like I just always wished there was like some kind of thing that just told me all the weird facts that like no one specifically tells you. So it started as my like love letter to wires and all the weird stuff that you could like learn or know about them. Like what are some different cores like? What are they good for? What are different insulators like? What are they good for? Like, why would you want a different insulator? Things like that. So I put these out a few years ago, and I'm really happy about them, but there's still some things that I'm working towards. So 2 that I'm coming out with next are batteries. So basically everything about power, I feel like that's so under discussed, especially with a lot of boards that have like very specific, like you just kind of hook it up. You don't need to think about the power as much anymore. And one about resistors, which I also feel like is a kind of confusing topic. And through making those 2, I really came to realize that there is no one good accurate explanation of Ohm's law. So I'm also making one about Ohm's law, including my like kind of hot take that it's not actually that useful for people learning electronics if you're not an engineer. So maybe it's a hot take, but I feel like every time I like see someone trying to teach electronics and they're like, and this is Ohm's law. So yeah, I don't know, be prepared for my hot take. But if anyone has any cool facts about buttons or about resistors or anything that you think should be included in these books, like maybe stuff that no one ever told you. My books also tend to get like kind of weird, like this one about buttons, like it's a little bit about buttons, but then it kind of goes into like how you can make a button out of a zipper and have a button out of a pom-pom and just like get weird with it, you know, like once you've learned like what a button is the way you think of it normally, then you could start thinking about like what could a button be if the world was a place full of pom-poms instead of whatever it is now. So yeah, if anyone has any facts about resistors, facts about batteries, or wants to like take me up on my edgelord Ohm's law perspective, bring it on.
Sound off in the comments. Be nice, everyone. Are these available anywhere?
Yeah. So these are all on my website, along with not to sound like an ad for myself, but I also sell these alligator clips that are fun colors.
If you didn't bring them up, I was going to. I have mine here.
Yeah, if you're sick of like electronics being boring and you want electronics to be fun, I think it's always fun, but if you want it to be extra fun, got those. So yeah, they're all on my website, leecyb.org. You can also find it on my Twitter or my Mastodon or my Instagram, any of those places.
I think I put at least your website in the description. It may have only been in the first stream, so it might be lost forever, but they'll figure it out. That's awesome. That the zines look fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
There's at least one. David Watts in the comments is with you, down with Ohm's law.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can't go on until somebody disagrees, right? No, I'm just kidding.
I'll take it on. I'm not scared.
Nice. Clem, can we get an RMRF update, please?
We have the results in. I could reveal it right now, and you already did, so
sorry,
you don't have to wait until the end. So, okay, it got through all of the stuff, and these are the last messages. So I still have the main files, and it's still functioning. Only .etc has been deleted. So only the writable file system and the rest still is there, which means that you basically can't nuke your system.
Challenge.
Which makes it really interesting for like stuff that is deployed somewhere or that you can get to. At least you can access it and diagnose it and see what's wrong. And it just
you heard it here,
doesn't
folks.
randomly die.
Same to
and
run.
Also, we have an update from the comments because the original developer of the Linux port commented, and it does have an SSH
nice.
server and client, but I didn't know that. I haven't found it yet. So, next thing to play with.
Awesome.
Cool.
Jonathan, would you like to go next? Have you woken up enough? Have I given you enough time?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thanks for having me on the show. Makercast has been, I guess, a big part of my maker journey for a while now. You guys really kept me sane during the COVID lockdown, so thanks for that. So I'm going to start by showing you actually the first project I ever made, and then I'll discuss a bit more about what I'm working on at the moment. So the first project I made came from watching an episode of Makercast, and it was Geek Mom Projects was on the show, and she had with her a Fibonacci disc from Evil Genius Labs. And so I thought I can make one of those. So the first thing I attempted to make was a Fibonacci disc. And yeah, don't laugh. So this is my Fibonacci disc.
It's awesome.
So this is supposed to be a Fermat spiral in here, and it lights up in like a Fibonacci sequence supposedly, and it's just got a Uno and some wires inside. So I just got this blue piece of Perspex, and I printed out the Fermat spiral from Excel and stuck it on and drilled the holes in. And so that was my first go at making something. But I'll show you what I'm working on at the moment. So let me see if I can get it. So this was supposed to be a sign language reader. So I got a comment on one of my YouTube clips from a guy who asked if I could put a sign language recognition onto an ESP32. And I said to him, I don't actually think there's enough memory or processing power on the ESP32 to do that with a neural network. So then I saw a video from Atomic 14 from Chris, where he did this. He did a car which had voice commands, and to implement the voice commands, he used a TensorFlow Lite on the ESP32. And I thought, I can use TensorFlow Lite to do the image processing so that we can recognize sign language. So now I put this together, and if you've ever used a TFT on a breadboard, you know that there's certain issues. Like if you bump the TFT, it goes out, and you have to reset the ESP32. So I mean, there really is, I guess, it really does underscore the big need for things like the big yellow display and the cheap yellow display. So I was having issues with that. And also the other thing is, I guess, getting the FTDI programmer in. So what I did is I made up this PCB, which is more like a glorified shield, I suppose. And my soldering skills aren't very good. So the only soldering you have to do with this is solder on the header pins onto here and here to connect everything up. So let's see if I've got one already connected up. So this is one here that I soldered on and I connected up everything. And this is much better. And then in here I can get the FTDI programmer. And then over here, I've broken out the 0 and ground pin so I could connect it for flashing. And then I've got the battery at the back. So the only wiring is really coming from the battery on this. So I'll turn that on. So the first one I did was in the TensorFlow Lite project, just to get familiar with the library, is there was a person detector in there. And I just put that on just to see, and I basically updated the code so that it would go onto the TFT display. So I'll turn that on, and I'll see if that works. All right. So that should go red if there's no person, and then green if there is a person. All right, so it's got a person on there now. I'm not sure if you can see that properly. And now it's green. Doesn't really show up very well on the camera.
Jonathan, we have a question. Is now an okay time to ask it?
Yeah.
Was this your first experience with PCB design? Looks like a huge evolution from the Fibonacci LEDs in terms of experience.
Oh yeah, the
skill.
Fibonacci LEDs was a few years ago, but this was the first experience for PCB design. So, so what happened is I was thinking about doing this on a PCB, and I thought this isn't really working very well. So, so I should try and put it on a PCB, and then PCBWay sent me a email saying they wanted to collaborate, asking me if I wanted to collaborate with them on a project. and I said, yeah, actually, there's this PCB I want to get made. And they said, okay, you can spend a certain amount of money, but you can't make the video just about making that PCB. And so I took them up on their offer, and I got the PCBs made. And now I've done a few projects. I've done a few projects on PCBs since then. So I mean, these are just simple PCBs. They're not like the kinds that you guys make, but they're just just getting a start, really.
Hey, PCB is a PCB.
That's exactly how I started.
Deshapu asked or noticed, I see the hallmarks of a fritzing PCB design. Is that what you used?
Yeah, I use fritzing. So it's just a 2-layer PCB.
Cool.
So that was pretty easy, actually. All right, and so now I've got so this one here is the person detector. So I'll show you the sign language recognition. So I've got this one here, but the battery is not working, so I can just take this out. This is the good thing about these. If you've got one project on another one of these, you can just take it out and stick it on a different one. Yeah, so this is yeah, I mean the cheap yellow display would be like you really see the need for it just because these TFTs are really finicky. All right, let me try see if this one works now. All right, so that's the sign language recognition, and it's got this monitor, and it gives you the letter, but I haven't actually put it says K and A, but I haven't actually held my fingers up. So if I do like a W, gives you 5 seconds to, oh, it's K and B now. Let me try that again. It gives you 5 seconds basically to position your fingers. But the only thing is it doesn't really work well with background noise. I think that's because of the training data. So the way I did it is I downloaded a notebook from Kaggle, which had a TensorFlow Lite model for recognizing some sign language, and then I uploaded the. So after that, the model was just too big to fit on the ESP32, so I adjusted the parameters to make it a bit smaller, and then I was able to get it on to the. It has to basically for the AI thinker, you don't want to use PSRAM because it just runs much slower. Like you can use PSRAM, but if you do, it runs much slower. So I had to make the model small enough, about 100K, actually, so that it would run with everything else, with the camera capture and everything, without the need having to go into PSRAM. So I got that working, and then the next thing I did on the PCB. So I went a bit crazy with this actually. So I did quite a few projects, but I'll just show you the next one. So this is a remote power board, a remote power logger, sorry, for solar cells. So Great Scott did one on his channel where he used an Arduino, and I'm using an ESP32. Just because if I've got it up on the roof with my solar cells, I want to know, like, I don't want to have to go up there and keep checking the OLED screen. I want to be able to basically log on and check it. So I did that on a PCB here. And the only thing, like, I guess I did make a couple of errors on this. So the first thing is this is the ground rail, which I forgot to connect. So I had to kind of solder that on the back. And then the other thing is this was supposed to be that there, if you can see, was supposed to be the SD card reader, but the different SD card readers have different pin orders. So the one I was using, I got the pin order mixed up. So I can show you this actually, how it works. So I can plug that in to
David Watts notes that you're flexing on all of us with organized plastic boxes. He says, I feel like a caveman.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just the only way I can organize myself, or else everything's everywhere. Well, it is anyway, so.
The way you just looked around, too, says that you're surrounded by them, I'm guessing, yeah?
Yeah, I've got lots of them.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah, so, all right, so. Now this is connected, so it tells you it gives you the web address here. You can't really see that, so when it first starts, and then we can go to that address and we can monitor the power of our solar cell or whatever's up there. So this is an INA 291, and you'll just have the solar cell plugged into this. So this has 1 ohm of resistance across it, which is a bit much to measure the short circuit current of a solar cell. So you have to use another resistor in parallel with that. But if I can get that up, I can show you. Let me just go to the. Oh, okay. All right,
Are you
that's
going to
not
share a
working.
screen? Okay.
No, that's not working at the moment. Let me try.
All right, well, he's doing this. Clem, you said you have an update.
Yes, I'm currently repairing. It's flashing. I'm at 52%.
Okay.
So it took basically all the time Jonathan talked to flash.
Nice.
Still not done, but I think we'll be back online.
Great.
All right, I can share now. How do I share the screen?
In the StreamYard, there's a present button.
Oh, okay, yeah.
StreamYard is not my friend. I just want to note that. Thank you for offering a free tier, StreamYard, but it's very easy to mess up an entire stream. Just saying.
All right,
Not
so
not sponsored.
Is.
Jonathan, are you on Twitter? Or I'm sorry, X? No. You know what? No, Twitter. We're sticking with Twitter here.
Yeah.
If you want to later
It's
add your
Twix.
handle, folks are. It's Twix, yeah.
All right.
Folks are interested in following you there.
All right, there we go.
All right, cool. Coming in. You ready? All right.
Very cool.
Okay, so that's basically showing the voltage and the current. So actually, I might just show you, see if I can get the cell out.
So while he's getting that, I did a really similar project with, I think, the same sensor, but I used Adafruit's, feather ecosystem, and they have a power monitoring feather wing and a OLED display and ESP32, and did something with charts, very, very similar to that.
So this is the cell I've been working with, and it's like a double-sided cell. So it comes as like a silicon wafer, and you have to solder on these tabbings, and then I've just done some epoxy resin on a piece of Perspex. And I guess the reason I'm using a double-sided cell is because it's supposed to be more efficient, because it can absorb light from both sides. But I guess in the thermodynamic limit, a cell is emitting light over both sides, and if you can get it to absorb light from both sides, you can get it more efficient. But the theory is it absorbs diffuse radiation. So I was doing some experiments with this, which is why I made that. Which is why I made this power logger, just so I could put it up on the roof and see which one was more efficient, the single-sided or the double-sided. And that's pretty much all I've got to show. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming. That's all great. Very cool. I've gathered that solar is a bit more popular in Australia than it is, at least here in Massachusetts, which is northeastern. And I can imagine why, just based on my limited knowledge of Australia. But that's very cool. I wish I was doing more stuff like that.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think most people have it here.
Yeah,
for something at least.
Makes sense. All right, Jason, are you ready? I'm
Sure.
already hypnotized.
Yes, you will send me all of your money. Is it working?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. What? How did this get here? we didn't plan that actually. Okay, sending it your way. You're gonna be big.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and Jonathan, it was cool to hear, your story of watching this and Geek Mom Projects was on, and you saw, something I made, and that inspired your Fibonacci LED project. So that was super cool to hear. Honored. But yeah, so the things on the wall back there, I mean, that's pretty much what I do. But lately, I've been collaborating more. And so I've started collaborating with Ben Hinke of Electromage and Geek Mom Projects. We collaborated on this Lux Lavalier wearable Fibonacci LED project. Deborah of Geek Mom Projects brings, wealth of knowledge of wearable stuff. So, this is one of my 40 millimeter Fibonacci PCBs like this. And then on the back is a footprint for the Pixel Blaze Pico, which is ESP32. It has Wi-Fi. It runs the patterns all built in. You can connect to it with Wi-Fi and actually write patterns that run directly on the board. You write the patterns in like a subset of JavaScript. So yeah, it's been super cool. Very neat and rewarding collaborating with them. And then so the next thing that we're working on is a heart-shaped version of that. So that is a very similar printed circuit board inside with the Pixel Blaze Pico on the back, and then just some diffusing acrylic and some 3D printed parts on the back. And then Deborah's brilliant wearable battery necklace design. So this takes a 1414400 whatever size lithium battery, and then the connector is a magnet. So if you need to, in a hurry, take it off, you just pull it off. And then what you might notice, if I put this back in, is that one of the cool things with Pixel Blaze, I managed my own, and I still have my own ESP8266 and ESP32 firmware that uses fast LED to drive addressable RGB LEDs. But that's like my least favorite aspect of, of all of this was the firmware development. So using Pixel Blaze has been great. It lets me focus on the parts of it that I enjoy, which are, designing the new PCBs and then designing patterns to run on them. But, you might notice this and the one in the back there are both running Pixel Blaze, and they actually link up and they're synced, so they run the same pattern. And if I change the pattern, even live coding the pattern, that one is the leader and this is the follower. They change at the exact same time. And then I also have one of my next projects.
We got a question here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You got it?
Yeah. So David is asking, thinking in circular patterns. So I got started with, just rectilinear matrix LED or RGB LED matrices, and I just really like making other shapes, novel shapes of LED PCBs. One cool thing with Pixel Blaze, and even somewhat in my own firmware with Fast LED, you can XY map it, and then you can just write your patterns to run in a square, and it really doesn't matter. And here, let me grab another battery and I'll show you just to illustrate the point of it. These are all running the exact same pattern code, but they have different maps because this only has 64 LEDs and that big one back there has 512. And then this bracelet on my wrist is a rectangle. It has 128 LEDs. They're all different sizes and shapes and have different LEDs, but they're all three running the exact same pattern code. They just have a different XY map. So yeah, this was the next project that I was going to show off. This is my first foray into flexible PCBs. So this is 128 SK9822 HDR addressable RGB LEDs on a very flimsy, flexible printed circuit board. And then this is completely inspired by another one of Deborah Guimond projects. This is the Hex bracelet that she made, powered by the same 14400 sized lithium battery. And you can see that it's also linked to that one back there. They're all running the exact same pattern code. But so anyway, we collaborated. I took her 3D printed bracelet design and made this, which was my first flexible LED PCB. And then, the question, how long do these run on these? Because these aren't huge batteries, right? They're AA. They're the exact same size as a AA battery. It depends on the quality. This one you can see it says it's 920 milliamp hours, and in our testing, that's actually pretty solid, pretty good, accurate. And you can see it actually has a USB-C port in the top of it, so you can recharge it. And when you plug it in, there's a little light here that comes on that shows you the charging status, red or green. And these are set by default to turn Wi-Fi off, so this leader follower thing wouldn't work. But if you're going to Burning Man or some rave festival or whatever, you can expect to get maybe 3 hours of battery life out of them. But these fit in your pocket, so just carry a bunch of them with you and swap it out. They're easy to swap out. But yeah, you can get a couple of hours at low brightness with Wi-Fi turned off for sure. And then of course this one has twice the number of LEDs, so it won't run quite as long. But yeah, doing all right on time. Yeah, so like I said, this is my first flexible PCB. The other thing I've been doing, I made these giant ones in the background. So the two on the side are 512s. They're 320 millimeters in diameter. And then this one is the 1024. Here I've got one outside of it. So this is the 512. That's what's hanging, the two smaller ones that are hanging on the wall back there. This is my largest single PCB that I've made. And then the 1024 in the middle is 0.5 meter in diameter. And it was too big to make in one piece. So I actually made it in 5 separate pieces that fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. So each of the 5 pieces is unique, and they all just mount to an acrylic backplate to keep them all together. So I did big ones, and then I saw a post by Scott Bezek on Mastodon, and he was posting about new 1 millimeter square addressable RGB LEDs. They use the same NeoPixel WS2812 protocol. And so I wanted to see how small I could go. And so I packed 128 of those little 1 millimeter LEDs into 1 inch circle, 25 millimeters. And it's just big enough that you can fit a QT pie from Adafruit on the back, which you can see here. So I really can't go much smaller and still fit a dev board on the back. You could do something like this where the battery and controller are on the back of your neck, but then you'd need 3 wires, power, ground, and data. So really, this is the lower limit of the size that I can go. Good question, David. So I have a stack.
And he clarified the big ones.
What's that?
The big ones.
The big ones.
He highlights
Gotcha.
the button. Yeah.
Yeah. So I almost always will order prototypes from Osh Park and hand assemble the first prototype or the first several prototypes. I don't have a reflow oven big enough to reflow either of these really. So yeah, I outsourced those, order them assembled. And then, but like even this little one, like I've assembled a stack of these. I have a stereoscopic microscope that I got after watching Strange Parts YouTube video on stereoscopic microscopes. And so yeah, I have you can see my homemade reflow oven back there. I use a Reflow Master Pro from Unexpected Maker. And yeah, so I've hand assembled quite a few of these little guys. But yeah, so let me show you then. So this is one that is assembled with the QT pie on the back, and then I ordered these nylon 3D printed back pieces for them. I prototyped them on my own 3D printer and then ordered some nylon ones. And then there's the diffuser, the black LED acrylic on the front, and then it has touch pads on each of the 3 mounting screws. So that's my smallest and most dense LED PCB that I've done so far. I think that's pretty much everything I had to show. Unless anybody has any questions, wants to see anything else.
That's amazing. I cannot imagine soldering those by hand.
Yeah, I would go mental.
Yeah.
If I even try.
Yeah,
like,
wild.
50 LEDs for a keyboard, that breaks my brain. How many are on there? 500 something, 1,000?
So
like that?
I don't actually solder them by hand, right? Like I get the stencil and I use solder paste. I place them by hand.
Still
placing orientation.
Right. The little 1 millimeter ones aren't even, there's no way to even hand solder those. Like you can only reflow hot air or hot plate or a reflow oven. There's no way to hand solder those tiny little ones.
Someone would disagree. Google tiny LED matrix.
I'm sure it's, yeah.
No, it's like he gave me a matrix that's like a thumbnail size and it's hundreds of LEDs and he solders that by hand.
With a soldering iron?
Yes.
I don't understand.
There are people making that a sport.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy assembling these. I wouldn't want to do it all day every day, but I throw an audiobook or a podcast on and just space out, and a couple hours later, I have a stack of them done. So I have Robin Ryder's Pixel Pump, which is very apt to the name for me. Just a hand vacuum pick and place pump, which saves me a ton of time. I can pull the tiny little LEDs right off the reel instead of having to dump them off the reel and then null them and place them with tweezers. So that saves me a lot of time. And then I make little turntables because most of my PCBs that I make are round. So I make little 3D printed turntables with bearings so that I can stick it on the blue tack and just rotate it. That helps.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Okay, it's my turn. I'm gonna go quick. Thanks so much, everyone, for sticking around. This has been awesome. This has been really, really great. Everyone's got such cool stuff. I'll go quick, and then we'll come back and we'll say goodbye. Okay, going big. All right. So I had an idea in a sleep-deprived state when my daughter was young and still learning how to sleep. I was thinking about guitar pedals and how a guitarist gets to like stomp on one right before they're about to like rip a solo, and just the catharsis of stomping on something. And I said, why don't we use that kind of user experience more, like, you know, outside of the guitar world? So I made a pedal. It's called the Hidden Agenda. And there's a pun there, and I encourage you all to shout it out when you understand what's happening. But this is an effects pedal, not for guitar, not for audio, for your keyboard and mouse. So as you can see, you probably notice this is a USB-C port, and on the other side, this is a USB-A port, which that's just a little mouse dongle in there. And so the idea is you plug in your keyboard or mouse, you stomp on it, and it applies some signal processing to your keyboard or mouse. So all of the effects are based on like classic audio effects. So I'm just going to demo what I call reverb. And so if you know what audio reverb is, it's like when you make a sound in a room and it kind of, you know, takes a while for it to die out. I'm going to add reverb to my mouse. Let me share my screen here. So I've got my mouse plugged in, and you can see, yep, you can see it moving around here. I'm going to engage the effect, and I'm moving my mouse a little bit, but you can see it's the tail is getting longer and longer. So I'm going to, here, I'll point the camera down my hand. So I just move a little bit, and the mouse kind of sails along. So yeah, that's the reverb effect, and it goes whatever direction you were last kind of moving in. And then one other fun one, put that back, is looper. So if you know what a looper pedal is, in the guitar world, you can record something on your guitar and it'll keep looping while you play something else over it. So all right, so I'm in looper mode. And what looper mode does is, so I'm going to hold down my mouse button and I'm going to record a gesture, and the pedal will just keep looping it as soon as I let go. So I'm going to just record little circles here, and now I have let go. You can see I'm not touching the mouse. And I can adjust the speed by turning the knob. I can make it go backwards by turning the knob the other direction. Yeah, so there's a bunch of effects for both keyboard and mouse. It's obviously an experimental project, but I really do like the higher level idea of like, you know, having these standalone hardware units for specific types of data processing, and like maybe you could chain them, you know, similar to like a modular synth or something. And I also just like the idea of stomping on stuff. So it's fun. And if you have any ideas for how to make it actually useful, like there's one effect on here that smooths out your mouse motion. So I apply a low pass filter, which, you know, might actually help folks with a trimmer or something. But if you think of ways that you could actually use this, if you're thinking outside the box.
I love how you like. This got shared around a lot of even my friends who are not in this like specific circle, and cool. people were so into it, and I'm so into how delightfully useless this is. It's great.
that's what I'm going for. Useless, but you know, if you can stare at it for a while, maybe you might be able to come up with something. I just like the idea of rethinking.
It might be useful just to mess with people when you install that and somebody doesn't know.
Yeah.
The looper would be useful if you had like an employer or a teacher who was monitoring, you know, mouse movements, or you needed to keep your screen awake, or
so one thing I don't mention in any like the stuff that I put out about it, but like actually useful stuff as far as being like a maker hackers, you can use it. It's got a serial port too, and so you can use it to read the raw log messages. Like you can output the raw HID messages as a log, and you can also do this thing where you can send serial messages to the pedal and have it play them back as HID commands. So you can script mouse movements, like you can write a Python script to just send out a bunch of serial. You can script mouse movements without needing any special privileges, because to do that from your computer itself, you need, like at least on Mac, you need like accessibility privileges. So this is potentially a cool way to automate. You know, if you have a remote machine somewhere, you can automate mouse stuff or keyboard stuff. And just a little bit about the hardware. So this is the PCB. I went the opposite. I went fully through hole. So I think everything except for the Xiao module is through hole, making this very, relatively easy to assemble. And then the USB like jack covers, I just 3D printed because there's really nothing kind of off the shelf for that. And they came out pretty darn good. I'm very happy with it. And my camera's not going to show the detail, but if you look at the pictures, I'm super happy with how they came out. So that's the hidden agenda. And then I just want to share an update on another project I've talked about, I think, on every Makercast I've ever been on, but it's been an ongoing thing. Hit clips. I'm doing it again. I'm talking about hit clips. Let me make myself big again.
Several people, I think, in the comments figured out the pun.
Yeah, good.
For hidden agenda.
Nice. Good. Yes, HID.
Yes.
Okay, so hit clips. These were a toy in the early 2000s. This is Baja Men Who Let the Dogs Out. My camera is garbage. There we go. These were like pre-MP3 player toys for kids. You put them in a cheap little Tiger Electronics player, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get a copyright strike, but it plays like 30 seconds of the song in the worst quality you've ever heard in your life. But kids loved it. You could share them. You could hang them on your backpack, whatever. So I made some. I found someone, and shoot, I'm forgetting his name. I'll post it somewhere after this. Truth Tech is the name of the blog that figured out the pinout on the original cartridges. And so like a year and a half ago, I made some. I made some new cartridges, and I 3D printed a little case for them. And the latest revision, it's actually running CircuitPython. So it's on an RP2040. You can use CircuitPython, the whole mass storage thing, to load your songs on, and then it uses the PIO to actually generate the audio signal. And so that's been really fun. I'm glad I have a design that actually works, and I made some available on my Etsy store. I think I have one left, which is also pretty cool. But I was doing some other audio related stuff, and I found this awesome Arduino library. And long story short, I figured out I could make a Bluetooth cartridge. So that's the tiny little ESP32. Come on, camera, let's get it together. I know it's late. You get the idea. It's the same thing. It's a little cartridge with an ESP32 on it, and I can't demo it because my battery's too low. But you can guess what's going to happen. So I can pop this in the little case that I designed, and put the little Bluetooth on it, slide it into the player, and then it'll connect to my phone, and I can play, again, the worst audio you've ever heard through this tiny little karaoke machine, which has a little microphone.
That's so cool that all fits, like thickness wise, in the old hit clips cartridge.
Yes. Barely. This one with the ESP32, the little mini module, I had to go with the thinnest PCB I could get from JLC, especially because I have this little backplate piece too. You can see to make actual contact with the player. It's like, it's barely fitting in there. The RP2040 based one is a little, I had a little more leeway there. And then the last thing, I just on related to this, I made a website for it, for folks. If I'm actually selling these, folks actually want to be able to get their music onto it. So these are my instructions. I designed a little, I call it a debugger board, but it's a programmer board. It basically just breaks out the USB and some of the I/O pins using flexi pins. Shout out Arturo. But what's cool about this website is I actually baked in an audio conversion script using FFmpeg. So you upload your file. I have to turn it into a very specific wave, PCM-like format. And so, I made a web page for it. You upload your file, you download the correct format. And I had it running for a while, and I realized it was actually costing me a fortune on Google Cloud because it's running FFmpeg, and I had to include this big, Linux binary. My backend's in Java just because that's what I'm comfortable with. But I found out there's a version of FFmpeg written for WebAssembly. So now this entire thing is just a static website that it gets downloaded, runs in your browser, all the audio conversion, everything. Also the artwork upload too. It generates. You pick a file, and if I go to downloads, I'm going to use our Makercast thing. You pick your artwork file. I have a little cropper here, and it'll generate a PDF with the exact right size to print out and put inside the front of the case. Also, completely in the browser, all JavaScript stuff, and it solves a very interesting problem that I imagine other people have, but I was surprised at how hard it was to just print something at an exact physical size. Right, yeah. I needed this to be 21 millimeters when printed out, and then there are a bunch of ways to do it, but turns out just rendering it to a PDF is the simplest way. It works really well.
Yeah, it's one of the few less annoying things about PDF.
Yeah,
at least
one of the very few useful PDF features.
Yeah,
it just assumes A4, which can get in the way, but sometimes it's really handy.
Yes, totally agree. So so it's fun to just I DIY'd this little thing and being able to take it from nothing all the way through. And I am not a PCB designer. This is relatively new for me as well. That we have the resources available to be able to do this stuff. And I got these little clear cases printed the PCB way. And the website, like I said, everything runs in the browser. To be able to deliver that as a real true DIY, I think is so rad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what a time to be alive.
Seriously.
Yeah.
It really is a great time to be a maker. We have so much available to us that is just unthinkable.
Also, do you know is the basically the connector that connects to the hit clips? Is that a standard part? So
the debug this thing, the debugger?
No. So the connector that's in the hit clips.
I don't actually know. I don't think so though. It's just
you haven't had to make that part. Just the
it's standard.
PCB contact.
It's standard for all the players. And you're not gonna be able to see it, but it's just little finger. It's 6 little spring fingery things.
Like pogo
because
pins,
that thing
pogo pins, kind of
It looks really similar to a SIM card connector.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So maybe it is one, and that would mean your cartridges could be integrated into other projects.
Yeah,
if it is one.
Yeah, that's a really that's a good point. I should look into that. With that, my child has just arrived and she's going to eat her dinner, and the stream is about to get about to be a different kind of stream, and so I think we should let me mute myself. If anyone has any closing words, now's the time. I had an awesome time. Thank you all for joining me.
Thank you for hosting, guys.
Thanks so much. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
Joining us.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
All right. Makercast, hit us up if you want to come on. We do this once a month-ish. Sometimes we miss, but we wouldn't if we had more people. So let us know. All right. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Have a good one. Goodbye.